What's going on, everybody? VitalSyntax here, and today we're going to be talking about DayZ Standalone. Specifically, there was some new information that came out of the Eurogamer event where Rocket Dean Hall, who is the founder and creator of DayZ, had somewhat of a press conference that he talked about new features that they want to add to DayZ and some of the things that they're hoping to change before the game is released. So I'm just going to kind of summarize what he talked about in that press conference. So the first thing that he talked about is hacking, which is one of the main issues with the DayZ project, because the DayZ mod, which is based off of Arma 2, relies obviously on the Arma 2 game engine, which is actually called the Real Virtuality game engine. And that game engine was actually specifically designed so it's very easy to mod and very easy to create mods for it. It's essentially just a modding tool with a base, Arma game. And what I mean by that is it's very open on the back end of things. It's very easy to inject new objects, new assets, new scripts, things like that. And it makes it also very easy to hack, but also very easy to mod. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we saw DayZ mod pop up in the first place, is because it's so easy for them to, implement these, features that make up DayZ. Now, what they're trying to do with the DayZ Standalone is go back into the Real Virtuality engine and rewrite a bunch of those basically backbone coding that allows certain assets or objects to be injected into the game, hopefully being able to kind of verify different assets and prevent people from hacking. I know that's kind of complicated, but essentially they're going back into the roots of the game and rewriting a lot of the game engine code to prevent people from hacking in the first place. Now, another thing that they talked about is working with different companies. They've been working with companies like Valve and Mojang, people who make Minecraft, because they have, for example, Valve has a system called VAC, which is usually pretty good about banning people that are hacking. And so they're actually talking to these developers and planning to send developer builds of the DayZ Standalone to the developers so that they can kind of run it through the ropes of how they go about checking for hacking exploits and things like that. So hopefully that will also kind of strengthen the anti-hacking features that the DayZ Standalone will hopefully allow, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of confusing, but anyway, let's move on to the next thing, which is new player versus environment features for the Standalone. So some of the things he talked about were new types of fractures. So if you know, in DayZ mod right now you have, you can break your leg, and if you do, you can't really walk. You kind of have to crawl, and you have to take morphine in order to cure that broken leg. And it also kind of cures it instantly, which is another thing he was talking about that they're trying to change, and I'll get to that in a little bit. You also have things like spraining your ankle or something like that, and that's another thing I'll talk about in a second. And you also have things like you have to take painkillers if you have like the shakes or whatever. And they're trying to do new animation systems and also incorporate some new features that kind of extend the kind of fracture system. So for example, they're talking about being able to make new items, like you can actually craft items like a splint. So if you do have a broken leg, you don't have to crawl all the way to the nearest town to get morphine, which will cure you instantly. But you could maybe make a splint, and then you could maybe like walk there, but you have somewhat of a limp. And that's also a thing that they're talking about with adding new animations to the game, where even if you do take morphine for a broken leg, it's not cured instantly. You might have a limp for, a set amount of time in game, which I think would be pretty cool as well. Now they're also talking about diseases that would spread throughout the population in a server, diseases like malaria or cholera, or maybe even the zombie disease. And those would be spread through player interactions, through player contact, usually probably in the larger cities like Cherno or Electro. And they're also talking about reducing the user interface to make it as simple and as elegant as possible. Essentially what they want to do is, instead of having a lot of user interface, flashy UI, they want to have sound effects and visual cues that kind of make it more realistic. So for example, instead of telling you that you're sick, you might start coughing, you might start vomiting, things like that, which I think kind of adds to the realism and the immersion factor. Also, some new features and completely new content that they're bringing to the standalone. I think the biggest one is more enterable buildings, and that's kind of part of what they call Churnerus Plus, which is kind of their extended version of the original DayZ mod map or the original Arma 2 map. And so they're adding new towns, they're adding new facilities, and the biggest thing is they're adding tons and tons of new enterable buildings, or I guess taking older buildings and making them enterable, having actual interiors, because that was kind of one of the larger complaints that a lot of people had about the DayZ mod, is that a lot of the buildings, like the majority of them, you could not go in, which was very frustrating and kind of broke that immersion factor. You know, it's kind of not very realistic. A couple other new content things that they want to bring to the standalone are household weapons. You know, I'm imagining things like baseball bats or maybe swords or axes. I mean, I guess they already have an axe, but you know, more melee weapons, or maybe like a kitchen knife or something like that, that allow for more melee close combat, you know, confrontations with zombies or even other players and stuff like that. And they're also, like I said, talking about adding new types of craftable items like the splints. That's the only one he talked about, and he said it might be a combination of like wood and bandages or something like that, or rope. So there might be some other craftable items that they might introduce. And then also another big thing that they're adding is a lot of new sound effects that might be for, you know, zombies, different types of audio and visual cues that, you know, maybe if somebody's trying to get into your backpack and steal your items, you'll hear like a zipper go down or something like that. Because it's kind of frustrating when you get stuff stolen from your backpack and you have no idea that somebody's even taking stuff. But that's still a cool mechanic that you can steal stuff. So maybe, you know, if they add an audio cue that you hear a zipper go off, that would be pretty cool. Also, another huge thing is they're adding tons of new animations, especially for the zombies, but also for a lot of the other different characters and stuff like that. And also a bunch of new zombie models as well, so you'll see a bunch of new different types of zombies that behave differently. Another big thing that they're trying to tackle with the DayZ standalone project is bug fixing, and they're kind of rolling out a new pipeline system that allows them to roll out patches much easier and much quicker. And also they're probably going to be testing most of those patches and changes once the standalone is out in the DayZ mod first. And then if they go over well, so say for example they want to implement, you know, this new groundbreaking feature that could have a lot of issues, and they kind of want to test it and see how it works out. They might, instead of releasing it in the standalone, they might first release it on DayZ mod, because it, you know, it's a smaller community, or it's probably going to be a smaller community at that point once the DayZ standalone is out. And then if, you know, they can get feedback, it's kind of like an alpha test almost for the new features that they want to bring into DayZ standalone, and they'll just kind of test those on the mod itself first. And also they're trying to do a lot more community support, so things like having the mod, the DayZ mod, maybe open source, releasing the source code, and kind of having it available to other people that want to add their own features and their own new additions, and maybe those can be incorporated into the standalone if they're, you know, really cool new features. And also supporting like community events like the Survive DayZ event, which I think is coming up pretty soon. And also the last thing I want to touch on is that there's a lot of things that Rocket was trying to be vague on, and he wasn't trying to go into a lot of specifics, because one of the problems they've had with the game is people copying the idea. And when I say that, I'm obviously referring to the DayZ, which is, you know, a direct competitor that has popped up in the past couple months, that is taking a lot of concepts from DayZ. Now, I don't want to get into an argument of which is going to be better. I don't want to get into an argument of which one came first. It obviously doesn't matter which one came first, but the fact is DayZ was released as a mod before we had heard anything about the DayZ. Whether or not the DayZ was in development, it doesn't matter. And they obviously took, I mean, nobody's going to disagree that they took a lot of concepts from DayZ. And you can take that at your own you know, interpretation, but from the developer's point of view, you know, from Rocket's point of view, they don't want to release a lot of new information, a lot of new features, in fear that those features are going to be copied by the DayZ or any other games that are currently in development. And they kind of want to keep those on the down low, so that when the game is released, it's unique and it has its own touch and feel to it that other games haven't blatantly copied or taken ideas from. So there might be a couple things that in the next couple weeks he's kind of, or even the next couple months, he's kind of I guess vague about. So just be aware of that. And lastly, if you guys are curious about release dates and things like that, they don't have any set release date as of yet, but they are going to release the either alpha or beta, a public version of the game before the end of the year. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a perfectly flawless version before the end of the year, but there will be a playable public version before the end of the year. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to give me a like or a favorite, or leave any comments down below with any of the topics I talked about or any features you guys would like to see in DayZ. And if you guys would like to see more feature DayZ videos, WarZ videos, or whatever else, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.